Texas Territory, late summer, 1879. The sun bore down on the town of Calico Ridge like the eye of something cruel. Dust rose from the trampling boots of cattlemen, drifters, and scavengers, all pressing into the square where a makeshift wooden stage stood like an altar to everything broken. At its center knelt a girl, barefoot and shackled. Her name was Isa, though no one present had asked. Her dress, if it could still be called that, clung to her like old smoke, torn and blood-stained. Dried, rust-colored patches smeared the skirt from the knees down. Her legs trembled under her weight. In her arms, a newborn whimpered against her chest, red-faced and too quiet. A thick iron chain looped around her right ankle, bolted to the post. Her skin was raw beneath it. "Step right up," hollered the auctioneer, standing tall in his black vest, grin wide as a rattler's yawn. "A 2 for 1, folks. Young enough to mend and comes with a squealer to grow your legacy." Laughter broke out among the crowd. "She's still bleeding," someone snorted. "Fresh as a spring calf," the auctioneer chuckled. "Ain't every day you get to name a babe you ain't fathered." Isa kept her gaze on the planks beneath her knees. The crowd's noise blurred into the thump of her heart. Her lips pressed against the infant's scalp, her only gesture of defiance, no sobs, no words. "Starting at 50, the auctioneer barked. 50 for the girl and her brat. Still breathing, still bleeding. Any takers?" 70, someone called. 55, another shouted. The price climbed like heat from the earth. With each shout, Isa's breath grew thinner. 150, one voice called. 200, from a man with a toothpick. A voice cut through the noise, calm and hard as gravel. 300, silence slammed down over the square. All heads turned. The man stood at the edge of the crowd, tall and unsmiling. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed most of his face, but his jaw was clenched like a trap set too tight. His duster coat was faded, his boots scuffed. He looked like nothing special until you saw his eyes. 300, he repeated, louder this time. The auctioneer blinked. "Sir, I reckon you heard wrong." "I heard just fine. What's your intent with the merchandise?" Someone shouted from the crowd. The man stepped forward, boots landing like hammers on the planks. "To give her a bed. To let her sleep. That's all." "Hell of a price for charity," someone muttered. The man turned toward the heckler. "Anyone want to top it?" Silence. His hand rested on the revolver at his hip, not drawing, just waiting. "No." "Then shut up and ring the bell." The auctioneer cleared his throat and banged the gavel. "Sold." The man climbed the steps. Isa didn't look up until she heard the shink of his knife cutting the chain from her ankle. It dropped with a final clank. He extended a hand. She didn't take it. "What do you want from me?" she asked, voice steady as a drawn bow. "Sleep," he said. "Then we'll talk like people." She stared at him for a long moment, then forced herself to her feet. The baby mewled softly. He looked at the child, then at her. "You got a name?" She hesitated. "Isa." He nodded. "Jack Morrill." He turned toward the crowd, still staring as if trying to understand what they'd just witnessed. Jack didn't care. He placed a hand lightly on Isa's back. "This way." With the chain still warm on the planks behind her, she stepped down from the block, barefoot, blood-streaked, but not alone. The town watched them go, a girl and a stranger, walking away from a crowd that once bought people like cattle. Not a soul followed, not a soul dared. The road to Jack Morrill's ranch wound through low hills dusted with cedar and rock, quiet but not empty. Coyotes howled at twilight, and stars bled into the sky before the last ridge gave way to a spread of land hemmed by fencing and long shadows. Jack spoke little on the ride. Isa held the baby tight against her chest, eyes scanning every fence post, every stretch of open space. Her feet ached from walking, her legs sore from hours of kneeling, but she never complained. The pain was familiar, expected. Jack led her around the back of the main house. Behind the corral, beside the stables, stood a weathered side cabin, one room, a small stove, a cot, and a cradle Jack had repaired that morning with mismatched nails. "This is yours," he said simply, opening the door. Isa stepped inside slowly, as if expecting a trick. The cot had clean sheets. The stove held embers still warm. A single blanket lay folded neatly on the edge. She didn't speak. Neither did the baby. Jack set a kettle to heat on the stove, then placed a bowl of oatmeal on the table beside the cradle. "I'll be back in the morning," he said. "You need sleep. More than that, the child needs a mother who's not watching shadows." He started to leave. "Wait." Issa's voice was soft, almost unused. Jack paused. She moved to the cradle, laying the baby down. Then, without turning, she said, "If you try to touch me, I'll slit your throat in your sleep." He nodded. "That's fair." Then he stepped out, closed the door, and left her alone. The night stretched on, colder than expected. Issa didn't sleep. She fed the child from the bottle Jack left, swaddled him tighter, then pulled a small knife from beneath the baby's blanket and tucked it under her pillow, just in case. She listened for footsteps, for locks, for breathing not her own. Nothing came, only silence. Morning broke in a soft hush. The baby stirred. Issa sat up, already alert, knife still in hand. Then she saw it on the edge of the cradle. A square of white fabric, worn at the corners, embroidered with fine thread, tiny bluebirds stitched into the edges. A handkerchief, not a threat, a gift. She touched it with cautious fingers. When Jack knocked and entered, he held nothing but a bottle of warm milk and a jar of mashed apples. She watched him like he was a bear. He set the items down and nodded toward the cloth. "My mother made that when I was a boy, for my baby sister. She died that winter." Issa blinked. "Why give it to me?" Jack met her eyes. "Because your child deserves more than iron chains and dirt floors." She said nothing. He reached into his coat and placed a soft bundle of clothes, small baby things, patched but clean, beside the jar. "I'll be back by dusk." She stopped him again. "Why are you doing this?" Jack's answer was quiet. "Because no one ever asked you how you wanted to live." She looked at him for a long time, the knife still tucked under her thigh. Then, finally, she asked, "And what if I don't know?" Jack gave a faint smile. "Then I guess you start with sleep." He left again. This time, she watched him go. When the door clicked softly shut, Issa sat on the cot, placed the baby near her heart, and closed her eyes. Not all the way, not yet, but enough for the darkness to feel a little less cruel. The days passed like slow-moving clouds across the Texas sky. Issa didn't leave the cabin except to fetch water or hang the baby's clothes to dry. The ranch stayed quiet, save for the rustle of horses and the distant whistle of Jack as he worked the pens. She never asked questions. Jack never pushed answers. But trust, like seeds dropped in rough soil, began to stir. Every morning, he brought breakfast, never more than warm bread and milk, and set it quietly on the doorstep. Sometimes he left a book with pressed flowers inside. Other times, a blanket. He never spoke more than needed. The baby, whom she now called Samuel in her mind but dared not say aloud, grew stronger. Issa began to sing again, under her breath, when she thought no one listened. Still, she never told Jack her full name. No one had ever asked it before. The townsfolk still called her the girl from the auction, or worse, chattel, the market wench. They avoided her at the trading post, stared at the scarred ring around her ankle. But Jack called her something else, Miss Issa. The first time he said it, she'd been drawing water. "Morning, Miss Issa." She'd frozen, the bucket rope burning in her palm. "What did you say?" she asked, cautious. He tilted his hat back. "Your name. I reckon you have one." She stared, then, with something like wonder, whispered, "No one's ever said it like that." Jack shrugged. "That seems wrong," and walked off. 3 nights later, just before dusk, thunder didn't roll from the sky, it came on horseback. 4 riders kicked up dust at the ranch gates. Men in canvas dusters, their faces familiar in the worst way. Issa had seen one of them back at the square, laughing when she bled through the floorboards. She was in the cabin when she heard the gate slam and the voices bark. Jack stepped out of the barn, shotgun already in hand, calm as a man who'd seen worse. "Evening," one rider said, his teeth yellow. "We're here for what's ours." Jack's voice was low. "This is private land." The man pointed toward the cabin. "She's stolen property. A missing asset from the flesh warrant registry. Took off before her paperwork cleared. She bled through her clothes," Jack replied. "I paid for her outright." The man laughed. "Then maybe we refund you and call it even." Jack didn't laugh. He stepped forward. "On this ranch, property doesn't breathe. That girl has lungs and a name. One of the others leaned forward, hand near his belt. You making this legal, I'm making it human. Silence held for a breath too long. Then the lead man spat on the ground. Not worth it. He yanked his reins, turned his horse. The others followed. Dust and hoofprints faded into the coming dark. Jack waited a long moment before lowering the gun. From behind the stable door, Issa stepped out slowly. You could have gotten shot, she said. Jack looked at her. So could you. Her arms tightened around the baby. What if they come back? Then we let them remember what kind of man lives here. She looked down, then up again. Miss Issa, he added gently. If you want to be called something else, I can try. She shook her head. No, she whispered. It was never the name I hated. Just the way it was said. And for the first time, she said her full name aloud. Issa Loreen. Jack nodded once. Pleasure to meet you proper, Miss Loreen. Though the wind still carried the scent of dust and danger, something warmer settled on the porch that night, the fragile breath of someone beginning to believe she could belong. The night air turned colder than usual. A faint wind stirred the chimes Jack had hung under the eaves, their notes soft and scattered like broken lullabies. Inside the cabin, Issa curled tightly on the cot, one arm around Samuel, the other braced against her ribs as if holding herself together. Her breaths came in shallow gasps. Sleep had finally claimed her. Then the dream came. She was back in the straw, knees bent under her weight, blood soaking the earth beneath her. Her cries mixed with the howls of animals and cruel, wheezing laughter. Boots kicked near her belly. Men shouted over her head. Not worth feeding. She's just a hole with a pulse. Hands grabbed her legs, pulled the child out before she finished screaming. Then cold, endless cold. She woke with a sob, clutching Samuel so tightly the baby whimpered. Her dress stuck to her skin with sweat. Her mouth tasted of iron and dust. She sat up quickly, breath wild. That was when she saw the light. Outside the cabin, through the small window, a single oil lamp flickered. Jack sat in an old wooden chair, coat over his shoulders, hat in his lap. The lamp burned low beside him. Issa blinked. Her voice cracked when she tried to speak, so she opened the door instead. He looked up as it creaked. Bad dream, he asked quietly. She didn't answer. He stood, slow and careful, as if moving too quickly would break the air between them. He picked up a tin mug from the small side table and walked toward her. I figured you might need this. He offered the cup. She hesitated before taking it. The scent hit her first. Lavender, chamomile, and something earthy. Not sweet, not bitter, just warm. She cradled the cup with both hands, letting the steam rise between her fingers. Jack didn't ask what the dream was. Didn't try to tell her what she'd been through. He just said, no one's going to touch you again, Issa. Not while you're under this roof. She looked up slowly, eyes glassy. How can you promise that? I don't promise, he said. I just keep watch. She took a sip. The tea scalded her tongue, but it helped. Jack didn't move to go back inside. He sat again in the chair, letting silence fill the porch between them. I used to watch the stars with my brother, he said after a while, before he joined the Rangers. We'd count the ones we thought were meant for us, like each one was waiting to be found. Issa said nothing but looked up. The sky was cloudless, so many stars it made the dark feel crowded. She whispered, which one's yours? Jack nodded toward the left. That one there, next to the crooked line. Been following it since I was 13. And it hasn't led you anywhere. It led me here, he said softly. She looked at him. Truly looked this time. His eyes weren't soft, but they were steady, the kind of steady you could lean on if you ever dared. She nodded once, then stepped back inside the cabin. Jack remained on the porch. That night, for the first time in years, Issa slept all the way through. No jolts, no screams, no knife in her hand, only the soft rise and fall of the child's chest beside hers. Outside the cabin, the lamp flickered once, then steadied, its flame burning through the dark, watched by a man who said little but meant more. The morning sun crept slowly across the fields, casting long golden lines over the fence posts and rows of corn just beginning to sprout. Issa rose before the rooster now, wrapped Samuel in a worn sling, and stepped out into the dirt with bare feet and quiet purpose. She no longer stayed hidden. She no longer watched the world from shadows. She moved like someone learning to belong. Her days began with goats and ended with fresh bread cooling on the sill. She knew how to mend a fence now, how to keep a fire going through the wind. She even smiled sometimes, not at anyone in particular, but to herself, like a secret kept safe. One day, after she'd milked the goats and hung fresh herbs from the porch rafters, Jack came back from town and found her hoeing weeds beside the stable. "You don't have to work," he said, setting his sack down gently on the porch. Isa looked up, sweat on her brow, dirt smudging her forearm. "I don't want to sleep forever," she replied. Jack leaned on the post nearby, watching her for a long moment. His gaze held a softness she hadn't seen before, not pity, something else. Recognition, maybe, respect. "My sister's name was Laura," he said at last. Isa paused, the hoe still in her hands. The breeze shifted between them, quieting the world for a moment. "She was 12 when a man offered my father money to take her east. Promised schooling, a better life." Jack's jaw tightened. "I was 18. I was supposed to go after them, but I waited too long." Isa stood still, letting the words hang between them. "They sent her to one of those auction towns," Jack continued. "By the time I found the place, she was already gone. No trail, no witness, just a necklace she used to wear, left in a drawer like trash." He didn't cry, he just stared out toward the edge of the pasture, where the wheat danced like golden ghosts in the wind. "I haven't spoken her name out loud in 5 years, he added softly. Isa walked forward slowly, stood beside him. She said nothing, but the silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of things neither could say, and maybe didn't need to. Later that week, Jack was fixing the stall hinges when the ladder shifted under him. The crash echoed across the yard. Isa ran from the garden, Samuel still on her hip. Jack lay in the hay, jaw clenched, a gash blooming red across his forearm. "You're supposed to be smart," she snapped, dropping to her knees beside him. "Not today," he muttered through gritted teeth. She helped him up, half dragged him to the porch, and made him sit. "You need stitching," she said. "I'll be fine. You'll be infected," he grumbled, but she was already cleaning the wound with boiled water and a clean rag. Her hands trembled once, then steadied. She worked in silence, brow furrowed, every motion precise. She sewed carefully, biting her lip as the needle slid through his skin. Jack didn't flinch. He watched her face, the way her lashes cast shadows, the way her mouth pressed thin in concentration. "You're not afraid," he said. "I am," she whispered. "But not of you." When she finished, she tied the cloth tight around his arm, sat back, and looked at her work, then at him. His shirt clung to his chest, streaked with sweat and dust. She saw the way his breathing hitched, not from pain, but from being this close. She reached out and placed her hand gently over his heart. It beat strong beneath her palm. Steady, warm, real. "If I can't trust men," she said, barely louder than a breath, "I still want to trust you." Jack looked at her, his mouth parted slightly, as if afraid to speak and break the moment. Her fingers stayed there, soft against his shirt, until the baby stirred behind them. Isa stood slowly, picked Samuel up from the porch blanket, and went back into the house without another word. But that night, Jack found a folded note on the table beside his supper plate. Inside were just 6 words, written in small, careful script: "Thank you for not giving up." He folded it once more, held it in his palm, and closed his eyes. Somewhere in that quiet, something long frozen began to thaw. The wind carried dust up from the trail, curling it around the front porch as Jack tightened the reins of a new foal in the corral. It was almost dusk. Isa was inside, coughing softly, her face pale from too many days without full sleep. Then came the sound. Hoofs. 4 horses, heavy. Jack looked up. The man who dismounted first wore a fine gray coat and a crooked smile. He was tall, with rings on his fingers and the kind of voice that liked hearing itself speak. "Well, hell," he drawled. "Ain't you hard to find, Miss Isa?" Jack stepped between him and the house before Isa even reached the door. "She's not yours. She is by contract," the man snapped, pulling a paper from his coat. "Bought at auction. Fair and square. She was bleeding from childbirth when you chained her up," Jack said. There's no fairness in that. The man sneered. You paid for her, yes. Well, turns out the auction was illegal. That makes her property unpaid. You owe me 300, or the girl comes back. Issa stood behind the screen door now, eyes wide. Jack didn't blink. No. Then you'll settle it like men. Jack stepped forward. High noon in the square. Bring your gun. The man smiled wide. I was hoping you'd say that. The town hadn't seen a duel in 3 years. But at noon the next day, folks lined the main street. Dust clung to every board, every boot. Children were kept inside, doors shut slow. Jack stood alone in the street, shirt sleeves rolled, the sun burning overhead. His hand hovered by his side. Across from him, the man adjusted his coat, flexed his fingers over a pearl-handled pistol. The sheriff stepped out. On my count. Jack's jaw tightened. The man licked his lips. Issa watched from the edge of the alley, holding Samuel close. The town held its breath. 3. The guns fired nearly at once. The man's shot missed. Jack's didn't. The bullet struck clean through the man's shoulder, spinning him down into the dust. He cried out, gun falling from his hand. Jack walked forward, slow and steady, reloading as he moved. He stood over the bleeding man and said only one thing. Men don't buy lives, and I don't shoot to prove I can.